8. I wrote an email to Cassandra Cottery. By the third draft it said, "You said you wanted to be kept in the loop, re destructive testing. Well, we are at that stage, so just letting you know, see you." I put it all on the one line so she might miss it. I clicked send and waited. 10 seconds later, the email notification window lit up and my heart sank because the subject was, "Stop, do not proceed. WRT destruct testing." I clicked it open. All it said was, "Call me, please." My desk phone rang. I looked at it for a while, but there was no escape. "Hello? Where are you? What's happening?" "Nothing. I'm in the glass room." "Stay there, okay? Don't do anything. I'm coming down. I have to make a call first. I'll be there. Don't move." "I wasn't saying today. I'm just keeping you informed." "Great. Yes, thank you. But I do not want you hurting yourself. Is that clear? I thought you were helping me. You said you would help." My hand holding the phone, the metal one, tightened. I did not usually get angry at people. I was not a confrontational guy, but I was annoyed to discover Cassandra Cottery's true allegiance. Because it should have been obvious. I'm making these parts for me. That's not practical, Charlie. It is practical. Don't tell me it's practical. My job is all about practical. I know more about what's practical than you ever will. Calm down. We don't need to argue. They're my arms. I'm sitting security. Assistants had gathered in the classroom. They watched with huge neon eyes. I turned my back on them. "We've been working toward this for weeks, and suddenly we can't proceed with testing? You can't bring in someone else. You can't just go find some random amputee. This is a secure lab. It'll take weeks to hire someone. I have that covered. I don't need. Just stay calm. Sit there and don't do anything, okay?" "What do you mean you have that covered?" "That's not important. Just," I heard clicking fingers. She was signaling to someone. "Sit tight." "How do you have that covered?" "Go," Cassandra Cottery hissed, but not to me. I put down the phone. When I turned over, was confronted with a dozen sets of cat's eyes. Jason cleared his throat. "Is everything all right?" I didn't say anything. I was thinking. Security was on its way. I wasn't sure what they would do when they got there. Maybe nothing, but maybe I had a limited window in which to act unfettered. "Go back to work," I told the cats. I funked out of the glass room and down to Lab 5. This was where the arms were housed, the most recent incarnation of the servo-magnetic sensory feedback technology that hung on plastic thread support spotlit. Of course they did. I didn't know why I had felt the urge to check them. I headed to Lab 1. We started calling this a repository because it was where we stored the parts that never worked right, never got finished, or were exciting until we invented something better. Some were entire fingers and spleens and stomachs. I touched my metal ring finger to the security panel. It glowed red. I stared. This lock had never shown red to me, ever. There was no reason for it to do so. It was my room. It was where I kept my parts. A groan slipped out of my mouth. I tried the finger again. Red. I thought maybe there's something wrong with the finger, but there wasn't. It was the lock. Cassandra Cottery had disabled my access. No door in Better Future would open for me now. I felt dizzy. I grabbed at the wall for balance, which was stupid because I was in the contours, which would keep me upright whether I was conscious or not. Not like Treacher's meat legs. And then I did start to fade, and my skull hit the wall. "Ow," I said. The contours took a stuttering step. I didn't ask them to do that. I was freaking out. I was brainstorming the nerve interface. That was bad. That might have unintended consequences. At the bottom line was I needed to get into the repository and see if my parts were okay. I kicked the door. It burst inward and ricocheted off steel shelves on the far wall. I flinched at my own violence. The lab lights fuzzed on. I walked inside. We tried to keep it tidy, but it looked like an army of robots had exploded on here. I scanned gleaming shelves, running inventory. I couldn't remember everything we had, but it seemed full. I felt myself calming. I had been silly. I had gotten carried away. Of course my parts were here. I was going to be hard to explain this door. I saw a gap, a space on the shelves where none should be. I was missing some arms, not in the good way. I exited, stopped, and went back in. I couldn't leave parts here. Who knew what they were by the time I got back? I grabbed some fingers and a forearm, and I saw a hand I liked better. I tried to rearrange things, and fingers scattered across the floor. I had to get out of here. I had to be gone before security arrived. I didn't know where I would go, but it had to be somewhere. I suddenly remembered Lola's heart, the one I was making. I dumped the parts on the nearest horizontal surface and left for Lab 3. I swiped my finger across the security panel just in case, but it gave me red. So I stepped back and kicked the door. I tried to be more gentle this time, but it blew off its hinges and smashed through a mounted spotlight. Glass rained to the floor. The noise would draw assistants like osmosis. They couldn't stay away from the sound of something breaking. I thudded inside and pulled back cloth off Lola's heart. I stared in dismay. It was spread across a steel workbench in 30 pieces. I'd forgotten I was tinkering with valves. It would take hours to put together. I couldn't even gather the pieces without scratching contacts and bending circuitry. I heard the elevator. I thought it was the elevator. It could have been anything. I needed better ears. I left the dismantled heart and stuck my head into the corridor. No one. But it was only a matter of time. An elevator stood open, empty, and I couldn't delay any longer. I ran, the contours thumping the floor. Inside I pressed for G, and of course nothing happened. I swiped my finger. The panel emitted a regretful tone and said, "Contact management." I stepped out of the car and kicked the stairwell door. I was panicking and didn't control the force at all when the door bounced off the stair banister and flew back at me. I threw up my hands and it ricocheted off the doorway 8 inches away from decapitating me and went skidding down the concrete steps. "Whoa," said someone behind me. Assistants were coming. "Up, up, up," I told the contours. They began cantilevering up the steps. On the third turn, they froze in mid-step. I thought, "Oh God, they have turned me off." But I could feel rigid stairwell air on my metal legs mesh array, and that meant I had power. I triggered a soft reset by imagining my left knee rising 3 times. The hooves rose and came together. A bug, some kind of regression. I would have to look at that. I set off again, and 2 levels later, froze again. I reset the legs. It must be the steps. Finally, I reached a door marked ground. I leaned against it rather than kicking, and it groaned and popped open. A man in a suit gave me a surprised look. Not security. That was lucky, because I was agitated and not making completely logical decisions. If someone tried to stop me, I didn't know what would happen. I had to find Lola. I didn't know what would accomplish, but I felt confident that together we could figure something out. The contours took this idea and ran with it. They cracked every tile on the back route to Building A and nudged open the stairwell door. It took 5 minutes and 10 soft resets to ascend to 8 floors. This was terrible. This was sloppy unit testing, but it made it. And thumped past potted plants and banged a metal fist on Lola's door. "Lola, Lola," I couldn't wait. I popped open her door. I was getting the hang of this. I pistoned into her suite, but it was empty. She wasn't in the bathroom. She wasn't anywhere. This didn't seem possible. Lola was always here. I didn't know where to go. The contours started moving. I had to backtrack my thoughts to figure out where they were headed. The recovery room, where Lola would have been before they brought her here. I had no idea why she might be there, but that was the only place I could think of. The contours cantilevered easily down 5 floors, and I thought I must be figuring out the particular configuration of the terrain that locked them up when they completely missed a step, and I hit the next one like a mallet. Cracks shot through the concrete all the way to the opposite wall. I gasped and clutched at the sides of the bucket seat. My thighs were drenched in sweat. I had never tested what had happened when water pooled around the nerve interface needles. It couldn't be good. I had to get off these stairs. I focused manually on each step to override the automatic pathfinding. My teeth hurt. I was grinding them. When I finally popped the door on the medical level, my body was shaking. I had never done anything so physically demanding. I stepped into the corridor, and 4 better-featured security guards were waiting for me. "Dr. Newman," said one, not Carl. "I would very much appreciate if you could calm down." A second out of 4 guards had a hand resting on the gun holster. They were telling me that this didn't have to get serious, but it could. I wondered whether I could get past them on the contours before they could draw their weapons. Probably yes. They were underestimating my acceleration. Of course, it would be a temporary solution, but it was something. I decided to do it. Lola emerged from the doorway. "Charlie," she shouldered her way between the guards. "You look terrible. What's wrong?" I said, why are you here?" "There's a man. He had an accident. They asked if I could help him." She tried to push hair out of my eyes. "Charlie, look like you're having a heart attack." "What man?" "Through here. Come on, I'll show you." "What accident?" She pulled me by the hand. I followed and the guards moved aside. "He's a security guard. He's that security guard." "Which security guard?" I wanted to say, but I couldn't because I already knew. "His name is Carl." She stopped outside the recovery room and turned to me. I saw a terrible light in her eyes, like love. "He doesn't have any arms." And there he was, Carl sitting on the edge of the bed, naked but for boxer shorts, flexing one arm, my arm. It was a beta prototype, thin hollow bands of delicate titanium alloy, foil rods on ball joints with independent axis of rotation. Its main advantage was that it could reach in any direction, including backward, and it weighed 10 pounds, which was ideal for the user who hadn't upgraded the load-bearing capacity of his spine. The nerve interface was first iteration, good only for motor function. It was essentially a trainer arm, but this did not change the fact that Carl should not have it. To his credit, he looked mildly ashamed. He stopped flexing. His eyes shifted. His lips twitched, as if he wanted to smile, but thought maybe that would pee me off. This was a good call, because in this moment it was everything I could do not to kick Carl through a wall. "He had an accident," Lola said. She saw something about the way the arm strapped around Carl's shoulder she did not like, and began fooling with it. "He's not allowed to talk about it, but, well, obviously it was traumatic, and it was so lucky because you have these amazing units." I was just telling Carl. Her fingers continued to fiddle around bulging muscles. The guy was like an anatomy textbook. It made no sense that someone who put this much work into his body would want to remove part of it, except for the burned fiancé thing. "You can never be too strong." "I'm glad you're here, Charlie, because what you've done through how you turned your inhibition into a positive is what Carl needs to hear right now." She smiled, one hand resting lightly on Carl's shoulder. I said, "I need to talk to you." Her eyebrows rose. "Well, okay." She walked around to Carl. "Keep practicing those lips." "Okay," said Carl. "He shot you," I whispered. "In the heart." Lola scowled. She had a heck of a scowl. I had never seen it before. Her eyebrows rotated 30 degrees. "You think I don't know that? Then why?" "Because he's hurt." On the corridor, a guard coughed into his hand. I forced myself to lower my voice. This is not an accident. Lola's eyebrows flipped. Why would you say that? Because nothing that happens here is an accident. Cassandra Cottery said, your first transfemoral was an accident. You got caught in a clamp. That's different. That's not the point. The point is, what's the point? She put her hands on her hips. These emotional cues were distracting. I was used to arguing with scientists who would explain with perfect bland places why you were wrong and stupid. Tell me the point. The point is they're all my parts. Lola went still. When she spoke, her voice was low and dangerous. You didn't just say that. I built these. He took them without asking. Or someone took them. How would you feel if you saw someone else wearing parts of your body? She screwed up her face. What? He's got a piece of me in his body. I felt panic. I'm not explaining this very well. It's a prosthesis. A prosthesis, Charlie. My prosthesis. He's lost both arms. Her voice echoed up the corridor. I glanced over my shoulder. The security guards avoided my eyes. I swallowed. I'll make something just for him. Lola stared at me. I'm surprised at you. They're going to give him the big arms, the ones I made for me. They're not going to let me have them. I tried to touch her arm, but she shook me off. Let's go to your suite. You shouldn't be here. You just had heart surgery. That was 2 months ago, she said, which surprised me, but I guess it was true. I'm fine. That man, she pointed at the recovery room, is not. Lola, I said, wait, don't go in there, but she did. I understand, said Cassandra Cottery. They're your parts. She spread her arms. What's to get? They're your parts. I nodded. My parts. I had a sister once. She used to borrow my clothes. I'd be looking everywhere for this one particular belt, and she'd walk in wearing it. Drove me insane. She put an elbow on the arm of the sofa. Her legs were tucked beneath her, if she might be about to curl up for a nap. I was not in a particularly nice sofa. I looked like one for the lobby they had been going to throw out, and that was just clothes, right? I should have thought this through. I blame myself for forgetting your feelings and all this. I wasn't going to chop off my arms, not today. Of course you weren't, right? Of course you weren't. That was just me. Her hand danced in the air. Getting obsessive about control again. You have to understand this project is forcing me to go beyond my comfort zone in a lot of ways. Like I told the manager, Charlie, I relish challenge. I relish it. But wow, it's hard for me to sit back and let things happen. I have to force myself to do that. And what happened today, Charlie, was I panicked and reacted on instinct. She took a breath. I promise to work on trusting you, Charlie. If I do that, can you trust me? I hesitated. She seemed convincing, but then again I was an extraordinarily poor judge of people. You want the arms. I know that. I will fight to get you those arms, but what I can do is to make you feel comfortable, Charlie. Tell me. A thought occurred. Anything. Well, I cleared my throat. About Carl, I paused, in case Cassandra Cottery wanted to leap ahead. He says he had an accident. Not quite true. He volunteered. We needed someone to test arms, and he came forward. Don't ask me why, but he did. She held up her palms. I couldn't tell you. I knew how you'd react. But there was a scheduling issue. Your department produces more prototype stages products than you can field test. You are blocking the funnel. But forget that. That's resolved. What's the problem with Carl? I'm not comfortable with him. Her eyes held mine. Would you like me to do something about that? Can you? Whatever you want. I did not feel proud of myself, but I'd remembered Lola's eyes when she had said, he doesn't have any arms. Can you get rid of Carl? It's done. Really? It's done. Forget about it. I feel bad for him, but she waved her hand. I get it. He's a distraction. He impairs your ability to work. Yes, exactly. He impairs. Don't spare him. Another thought, she said. The elevators worked. I had renewed access. When I exited at the labs, I passed a closed, pristine stairwell door. It had been 2 hours, and already they had erased everything I had done. I shouldn't be here. I had been awake for 20 hours and couldn't feel an adrenaline crash coming, but I didn't want to lie in that bunk room with a dead potted plant. I didn't want to stare at the ceiling and think about what I'd asked Cassandra Cottery to do. I swiped into Lab 3. The lights flared like supernovas. On the steel workbench gleamed tiny valves and switches. I closed the door and made my way to the bench. I retracted the contours to a comfortable height, picked up my Z-specs, and began to work on Lola's heart. I emerged so tired that I barely kept my head up. The contours bore me along, minding that I nodded off once or twice. They were good legs. Lola leaned against the wall outside my bunk room, fingering the hem of her polo shirt. Over the heart I stitched a Better Future logo. Hi. Oh, I said, hi. I'm sorry about before, the argument. Okay, now she was here, I couldn't even remember why we'd fought. I'm a yeller. I should have warned you. It comes with growing up fighting with your mom. I was thinking that to you maybe it came across more angry than I meant, because you have a different baseline. That made sense. I nodded. So, Charlie, I'm kind of scared that you don't like me anymore. Oh, I said. No, that's not true. Are you sure? Yes. She held out her arms and we hugged. She turned her head and kissed my neck. You're the best. I don't mean that like an expression. She stepped back and kicked my contours. They tingled, as if I were outside in a thunderstorm. I should let you sleep. You look beat. Okay. What do you say about making parts for Carl? I realized that was a big thing. It's really sweet. It's like the best thing you could ever do for someone. Sleep. I'll talk to you when you can think straight. Okay. I went inside and closed the door and stood there. I couldn't sleep. Not because of phantom pain, because of Carl. He crawled into my mind and I couldn't get him out. I woke sticky with sweat from dreams of Carl following me. He stood in the clamp looking at me armlessly as the plates closed in. His eyes said, "How could you do this? You know I need parts." I sat up. Carl was bad, wasn't he? He had shot Lola and stolen my arms, or if not stolen, at least used them. The point was, he was a destroyer of relationships. He was dangerous to an important thing I had, but he had no arms. Without my help, he would get hospital prosthetics. He would live a terrible life. I woke the contours and levered upright and headed to the glass room. I could call Cassandra Cottery. I didn't know her home number, but I would leave a message on her voicemail. Then I would be able to sleep. But with the dial tone in my ear, I hesitated. My brain whispered new scenarios. Carl doing physical therapy with Lola, her staying behind him, encircling his torso with her arms, showing him how to move, her breath tickling his ear. I saw movement beyond the green glass. Jason working later. I thought, maybe there's another way.